one or two friends, and in fact they opened the Holland Park Synagogue especially for me. It was closed generally during the year because they couldn't afford the central heating, but they specifically opened it for me, and I had presents, and I really enjoyed being back home in spite of the Blitz. So really evacuation wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't really like it at all.
Can you tell me a bit more about what it meant to you to go through confirmation?
Well, it was a stage in life that I was aware of because for years when I was at home before the war with my dad, he would tutor people who were coming up to their confirmation. So I more or less learnt it before I was due to learn it because I heard what he was tutoring the other boys, and of course I was looking forward to it myself. And to be suddenly whisked off, away from home because of the war, it bothered me a lot. And it was very important that I had it in my own synagogue, with my own family and with my own friends, in the atmosphere that I'd been used to all my life. And that's why I came back in spite of the bombs. And of course, it was a bad time. The bombs continued to come, and I slept in a bedroom on the ground floor with very large windows to the front of the house. And at 3 o'clock one night, when I was just in bed asleep, there was a bomb that landed very near to our house, and the glass all flew across the room, shattered. Luckily I was in bed and it didn't affect me. But we had a lot of traumatic experiences during the Blitz. And I went to school every day, and I didn't really know whether my house would still be there when I came back in the evening. But that's one of the things we just put up with. We didn't really anticipate that we were going to be the ones that were going to be killed. And in fact, it got so bad that on one occasion we went down to the Shepherd's Bush Underground station and slept on bunkers on the platform. But we didn't do that very often.
Did you have an air raid shelter at home?
We had one outside the house on the pavement. They built brick air raid shelters, but it was very cold in there, and it was just wooden slats that you could sleep on. There was no bedding. And we tried that a couple of nights, but we didn't fancy that. We just took the risk of being in our own beds.
And can you tell me about your experience of being under attack later while you were at the quantity surveyors?
Of what?
Your experience of attacks later in the war when you were at work at the quantity surveyors.
Attacks?
V1s and V2s.
Oh. Well, later on, when they appeared in the late 40s, 42, 43.
Sorry, we don't know what they are. We need some context.
It's just that thing we were saying earlier about saying the V1s rather than...
Yeah, in the late 40s, well after the Blitz, the Germans delivered a new bomb called the V1 and V2, which they were able to launch for occupied France, that would come over, and when the engine stopped, the bomb would fall below. And you had warning that it was coming, but it was just nothing you could do about it. If it landed and blew the house up where he was residing, that would be it. And when I was, as I said before, I was interviewed in January 1944, and I was given the opportunity to work as a trainee quantity surveyor in a firm in Westminster. And of course Westminster was a very likely spot where the bombs would land, the flying bombs, the V1s, the V2s. And I was on the top floor of a house in Queen Anne's Gate, and when the air raid warning would sound because there was a V1 approaching, we would all go down to the basement, which was heavily reinforced because the MI5 were in the lower part of our building, which we didn't know about. And so they were being protected. So we joined them down there in the basement until the air raid, the all clear was sounded. And that was very disruptive to our work. So the manager said, look, if we stay at our desks, then if we're going to get a direct hit, that's going to be it. But he said to prevent us being injured by flying glass, we've got 2 filing cabinets which we can empty, and we want all the youngsters to go into these filing cabinets as soon as the air raid warning sounds. So we did it. I was 16 when I joined the firm, so 16, 17, and other boys just went into this metal cabinet on the top floor of the building and waited there for the all clear. And that's how we're able to do our work without it being disrupted by going down to the basement and up again. And that's how we spent the war.
Have you got a mobile phone in your pocket?
Yeah.
Because I'm getting interference from it. But
But that wasn't too much, was it?
no, it was starting to
Okay.
generate. Sorry.
No, it's no problem. You're right to tell me about it. Oh, it's my phone was in my pocket.
Did it make a noise, was it?
It was making a noise on the recording, though I couldn't hear anything at all, but Rob could hear it because he's got his headphones on.
Okay.
Are we okay to...
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, having seen all this bombing of London, the bombing, the V1s, the V2s, how did you feel about the RAF bombing of Germany that was going on through the war?
Well, the bombing of Germany didn't really happen until later in the war. It wasn't in the initial stages that Bomber Command sent their thousands of bombers every night to Berlin and other countries until the forces had landed in France and started the occupation of Europe again. It was after then that the Bomber Command followed up with destroying parts of France, Germany, in advance for the troops to follow on. The Air Force helped the troops go further into occupied territory. And without the bombing, they couldn't have progressed. And I was very pleased that the RAF were doing that. And not only RAF, the American Air Force with their major aircraft, what do they call them, the big massive aircraft that used to be employed by the Americans, and bombed the installations in Germany to destroy all their railways and their other, the dams and all their supporting facilities for the war to be continued. I was very pleased about that. I felt it should continue until they were completely annihilated. I hated them.
Was that because of what you'd seen in London?
Not only that, because the fact that they had caused the war to be happening in the first place. People being killed, some of my closest relatives were killed, and it upset me tremendously. And even when I was posted to Germany, and I was amongst the German people there, we had to employ them on the RAF station because there was heavy work to be done, and we employed them to do the heavy lifting of batteries and things like that. And they were very arrogant. They thought they'd won the war, and they were telling us what to do and what not to do, and it was very upsetting. And in particular, on my 20th birthday, when I was in Germany, my parents went to Selfridges in central London, and recorded a birthday message and sent it on a gramophone record to me, to record, to listen to on a gramophone. Now, there was a gramophone in the library, and I went in and asked if I could play my record on the gramophone, and there was a German in charge of the library, And he said, absolutely not. I said, well, why not? He said, because this gramophone is to play records that are in the library here. That isn't in the library, so you can't play it. Well, I wasn't going to have that. So I spoke to my officer and I told him, and he went down there and he said, why can't Aircraftsman Levy play this record? His parents have sent him a birthday greeting. Why are you stopping him from playing it? He said, because it's not in the library. And I decided what plays on there. So the commanding officer said to him, thank you very much, but we've had enough of your services. Goodbye. And off he went. And we found that with a lot of the employees, they tried to tell us the whole time what to do and what not to do, as though they were the victors and we were the underlings. And I really hated them for that. So that was my experience in Germany.
And what do you remember about the end of the war?
Trying to think where I was. Well, the war finished before I went into the Air Force. So there were lots of celebrations in London.